This may be the last time I have a hearing with you because I don't think you're long for your job. But I'm going to tell you this. I pray for you. I pray for you that you can step up and defend your oath, defend the Constitution, and do a much better job. Terrorism.
You don't get to say the America is not safer under this leadership.
I am not saying
America
that.
is safer because of the work of the FBI.
You're making a presumption of premise.
4,700 children.
Sir,
we have seized 6,000 weapons and 23,000 violent felons have been arrested.
FBI agents, criminals benefit from it. Vladimir Putin benefits from it. And it really makes me wonder who you're looking out for. It makes me think we can't trust you as a nation. You swear to release the Epstein files, but now you're withholding the Epstein files. You claim that you have a suspect in a serious assassination. Whoops, then you don't have a suspect. You know nothing about plans to remove FBI agents, yet you're directly involved in those plans. In the words of an ex-FBI official, you are overseeing, and I quote, generational destruction of the nation's premier law enforcement agency. This may be the last time I have a hearing with you because I don't think you're long for your job. But I'm going to tell you this. I pray for you. I pray for you that you can step up and defend your oath, defend the Constitution, and do a much better job.
Cory Booker tells Kash Patel to his face, "I don't think you're long for this job." Kash Patel thought he knew exactly how this hearing was going to end. Sit down. Dodge the questions. Throw some numbers around. Walk away clean. He had done it before. He had survived 14 months of congressional oversight using the same playbook every time. Controlled answers, careful phrasing, a lawyer close enough to whisper when the questions drifted somewhere dangerous. And for 14 months, it worked. Nobody told him Senator Cory Booker was done playing the game. What happened inside that Senate hearing room was not a standard oversight exchange between a member of Congress and a federal official. It was something rarer and more uncomfortable than that. It was the moment a senator decided that patience had a limit, that professionalism had a cost, that sitting in the same room as a man you believe is systematically dismantling the nation's premier law enforcement agency and doing it with a smile that has a breaking point. And on this particular morning, Booker reached his, not loudly at first, not with theatrics. He reached it with precision, with the kind of cold, methodical pressure that is far more dangerous than shouting, because shouting gives the other person something to respond to. Precision does not. Watch what happens when Booker opens. He starts with the first question he asked at the last hearing. Did Patel have any knowledge or discussions about removing FBI officials and installing political personnel before he was even confirmed to the position, before he ever took the oath, before he was legally in the job? The question matters because it goes to the core of everything that followed. If Patel was coordinating personnel purges before he was confirmed, it means the decision was never his. It means he arrived at the FBI not as a director with a mandate, but as an instrument of a plan that was already written. Patel's answer was a masterclass in bureaucratic evasion. He reframed the question, narrowed the language, and answered something technically adjacent to what was asked without ever answering what was asked. He said he discussed the type of people who would be employed. He said those failing to meet the mark would not continue. Booker pressed. Patel shifted again. Two officials in the same room having two completely different conversations, and only one of them knew it. Then Booker moved to the grand jury. He asked Patel directly whether he testified before the grand jury that Donald Trump had declassified the documents in the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. A straightforward question. Patel said the transcript was publicly released. Booker told him that was false. A court had denied a news outlet's request to obtain that transcript just months earlier. What Patel told this committee was not accurate, and instead of correcting the record, instead of acknowledging the error, Patel retreated behind the same answer again. The transcript is the best evidence of what I said. That sentence is not an answer. It is a wall. Booker knows the law. He told Patel directly. Under Rule 6 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, a grand jury witness is not barred from sharing their own testimony. This is not a gray area. This is not a legal debate. The court said explicitly that Patel was free to discuss what he testified. Patel could answer the question. He simply chose not to. And when Booker asked why he was refusing to answer a simple yes or no question on a matter central to his own credibility and integrity, Patel said the premise of the question was inaccurate. There was no premise. There was only a question. Did you testify that Trump declassified those documents? Yes or no? Patel never answered. He sat behind his wall and waited for the clock to expire the way witnesses do when they have decided that survival is more important than truth. But that was only the beginning. Booker moved to Brian Driscoll, and this is the part of the hearing that people are not talking about enough. 20 years of distinguished FBI service, special agent in charge of the Bureau's Newark field office, Medal of Valor winner, Shield of Bravery, a man who spent 2 decades investigating the worst criminals in the country, building cases that put dangerous people behind bars, earning the kind of institutional trust that only comes from years of doing the work. Patel terminated him. The termination letter cited Article 2 of the Constitution as the legal authority for the firing, but here's the problem. Article 2 vests executive power in the President of the United States, not the FBI Director. Kash Patel is not the President. Booker asked him directly, plainly, with no room for evasion, under what authority did you fire Brian Driscoll using a constitutional provision that belongs to someone else? Patel said the matter was under litigation and he could not discuss it. 20 years of service. Medal of Valor, fired by a letter citing authority that does not belong to the man who signed it, and the director of the FBI cannot discuss it. Then came Stephen Miller, and this moment deserves more attention than it received, because what Patel admitted in that hearing room, on camera, under oath, in front of reporters and committee members and the permanent Congressional record, was extraordinary. He admitted that he talks to Stephen Miller frequently. The word he used was frequently, not occasionally, not when required by interagency process, frequently, about his job, about his responsibilities, about who stays at the FBI and who goes. Miller is not a law enforcement official. He holds no position inside the Bureau. He has no investigative authority, no oversight role, no legal standing to direct the operations of a federal law enforcement agency. He is a political advisor inside the White House, and the director of the FBI confirmed that this man has frequent, direct access to conversations about how the nation's premier law enforcement institution is being run. Patel said it out loud like it was completely routine. Like it was the most natural thing in the world for the FBI director to take operational guidance from a White House political operative. The room heard that, and the room understood what it meant, because there is a word for what happens when a federal law enforcement agency receives operational guidance from a political operative. It is not coordination. It is not collaboration. It is something the FBI was specifically designed to be independent from. The entire institutional architecture of the Bureau exists on the premise that law enforcement decisions and political decisions must be made by different people with different accountabilities. The moment that wall disappears, the agency stops being a law enforcement institution and starts being something else entirely. Patel confirmed that wall was gone, and he did it casually, as if the distinction had never mattered. Booker then laid out what Patel had done in 8 months, not in general terms and specifics. He pushed out senior FBI agents with decades of institutional knowledge. He made this the first moment in the entire history of the FBI where neither the director nor the deputy director had any prior experience inside the Bureau. He diverted 20% of all FBI agents away from their assigned investigations to assist ICE with immigration enforcement. He disbanded entire task forces, the teams targeting intellectual property theft, foreign influence operations, public corruption, Russian oligarch networks. Agents who had spent years building cases against foreign interference in American elections reassigned. Agents whose entire careers were built around protecting children from predators reassigned. The infrastructure that made the FBI capable of confronting the most serious threats to the country systematically taken apart. And according to Patel's own admission in a separate exchange during the hearing, it would take 14 years to fill the institutional vacancies created by his purge. 14 years. And Booker asked the question that the entire hearing had been building toward. When you remove the people responsible for investigating criminals, when you disband the task forces that go after corruption and foreign interference and financial crime, when you gut the institution responsible for protecting the country from its most dangerous threats, who benefits from that? He answered it himself, slowly, deliberately. Corrupt people benefit from it. Criminals benefit from it. Vladimir Putin benefits from it. That sentence landed differently than anything else said in that room, because it was not rhetorical. It was not partisan theater designed to generate a clip. It was a logical conclusion drawn from observable facts. When the investigators are removed, the people who are being investigated gain protection. That is not a political argument. It does not require a party affiliation to understand. It is arithmetic. And the man sitting across from Booker had no response to it. Patel sat there while the words settled into the room. He did not interrupt. He did not reach for his attorney. He sat with the stillness of someone who has decided the only safe strategy is to appear unmoved. But stillness is a choice, and choices communicate something. What that stillness communicated was that no rebuttal was coming, because some arguments cannot be rebutted. They can only be deflected. And Patel had been deflecting all morning. Booker did not stop. He reminded Patel that during his Senate confirmation, he made a specific promise. Every FBI employee would be protected against political retribution. He said it under oath. He told the committee he was not aware of any plans to punish FBI agents for the cases they had worked on involving Donald Trump. Booker looked at him directly, with the steady attention of someone who had read every document and was now holding the man responsible for the contradiction between those documents and that oath. And he said the sentence that will outlast this hearing. "I don't believe you were truthful." That is the kind of sentence that echoes after the cameras shut off. Then came the line the entire room had been waiting for. Booker told Patel what history suggested. Donald Trump had shown in his first term and now in this one that loyalty is a transaction with an expiration date. The moment a person stops being useful, they are discarded. It had happened to officials with far longer relationships with Trump than Patel had. It was a pattern so consistent it had become predictable. And Cory Booker looked at the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and said what he believed to be true. "I don't think you're long for this job." Not as an insult, not as a political attack designed for the highlight reel, as a reading of history, as a pattern everyone in Washington had watched repeat itself enough times to recognize on sight, as a prophecy delivered by a man who had sat across from enough powerful people to understand how their stories tend to end when they have mistaken access for loyalty. Patel had absolutely nothing, no denial, no rebuttal, no prepared answer drawn from the stack of briefing papers sitting in front of him. The man who had survived 14 months of hearings by controlling every exchange sat in front of a senator from New Jersey and had nothing. And then he tried to dismiss everything Booker had said as a rant of false information. And Booker came back. He told Patel that he follows him on social media, that the posts Patel sends out are not the posts of someone trying to bring the country together, that accountability runs in both directions. And then he said the 5 words the room heard differently than every other sentence that morning. "I am not afraid of you." Not a threat, not performance. A statement of fact from a senator who has spent his career walking into rooms where the powerful expect deference and refusing to give it. A man who served the people of Newark, who worked alongside FBI field agents and knows what the Bureau is supposed to look like when it functions the way it was built to function, who understands the difference between an institution and the man temporarily occupying its highest office. Patel had his title. He had his lawyers flanking him. He had the name of the president as a political shield, and none of it worked in that room. Because what Cory Booker brought that morning was not a document or a procedural motion or a carefully researched legal argument. He brought something that bureaucratic evasion has no answer for. He brought the truth, stated plainly, directly, to the face of the man responsible for the damage. The hearing moved on. Other members asked other questions. The gavel came down and the room returned to the familiar rhythms of congressional procedure. But something had already shifted. Because when a United States Senator sits across from the director of the FBI and tells him to his face that he does not believe him, that he is overseeing the generational destruction of the institution he was sworn to protect, that he will not be around long, and that he is not to be feared, and the director has no answer for any of it, that moment does not stay inside the room. It travels. It travels through every FBI field office where agents who spent their careers doing serious work are now filling out immigration paperwork. It travels to every investigator who was reassigned away from a case that mattered, because the priorities of the Bureau were rewritten by someone who talks to Stephen Miller frequently. It travels to the families of people whose cases will never be closed because the task forces that would have closed them no longer exist. It travels to the survivors of crimes whose perpetrators remain free because the investigators who would have built those prosecutions were shown the door for failing to demonstrate sufficient political loyalty to an administration that had nothing to do with why those agents joined the Bureau in the first place. That is not a political observation. That is a consequence. And consequences do not respect the schedule of the news cycle. And the question now is not whether Booker was right about the damage. The record makes that plain. The question is whether anyone with the authority to reverse it will act before 14 years of institutional rebuilding becomes the price of 8 months of decisions made in a conference room with a White House political operative on the phone. Because some warnings are not warnings, they are records, and this one is permanent.